CTC meeting for the 16th of March 2016. And we've also got an additional guest. We've got Josh Gavant from Microsoft joining us as an observer today. We've also got Bradley Meck joining us to talk about the ES modules enhancement proposal that has been causing lots of discussion. So to stand up, and we're going to go by the order in the document. So Evan, you're starting us off.
All right. I've been working on getting 5.9.0 out. I was about to start the actual builds. Now I've started looking back into a better options parsing solution. Collins next.
I don't think Colin's here today. I think he said he wouldn't be able to.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So Michael Dawson.
Michael Dawson or Michael Rogers?
Michael Dawson, who is here and is muted.
Right.
Let's just go on to the next. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, I was just getting myself. So yeah, I continue to work on the V8 testing in the Node tree. It's working on several Linux platforms, but have to figure out why it's not working on ARM. Still working on the release machine for Big Endian, PPC, some libuv cleanup for AIX, and some preparation for the upcoming VM API face-to-face. And next is Trevor Norris.
Working on a commit for async wrap, and also working on the domains post-mortem. That's it for me. I don't have the list in front of me.
I didn't do much except for look at a couple of VPRs. And that's all. The next is James Snell.
So I've been working on some PRs, landed the buffer API changes today, working on a few other open items, and then reviewing PRs and getting things landed. That's me. Next is Rod.
Seeing a pattern here, lots of reviewing going on. So I've been spending an inordinate amount of time on the OSX build slaves. We're having some drama over there. Hopefully that's resolved for the time being, but we are in the process of trying to find a new supporter of the OSX build slaves. So somebody that can put some money towards either a colo situation or a large corporate that can actually host them somewhere. So that's ongoing stuff. OSX installer is making good progress, so we hopefully will have a new installer by version 6. So there's pull requests open for that all over the place. Michael, Ali, you're next.
So I've been looking at a few issues related to V8, so investigating those. And in addition, I've been looking at the native modules and how they relate to FFI and API stuff.
Chris.
I think the next is Chris.
I haven't been doing much this last week, mostly work stuff. I think next is Jeremiah.
Hello, not too much. I've been working on some crazier stuff like splitting up Node.js into multiple files, and also some stuff with improving our man pages and whatnot. Next would be Michael Rogers.
You also need a big one, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Pardon?
You also did a very big onboarding as well, didn't you?
This is true. This is true.
How many people were in the onboarding?
Like 7.
Wow.
Not including the 2 other collaborators who sat in and are going to try to eventually do onboardings themselves, I think. Who are,
Wow.
those are Even Lucas and Miles, and I think Rich Trott might be doing one at some point too, if he's up to it.
Awesome. So I've been working on some tools to try to understand org-wide what the activity is. So there's an issue in the CTC repo about that. That's like a 30-day report across the org. But I think it's going to be good. We'll be able to get some good kind of metrics and graphs, and maybe even some kind of reporter alert on a regular basis about activity org and project-wide, because this is getting harder and harder as all the activity is broken up over all these multiple repos. So that's mostly what I've been working on. Next up is Rich Trott.
Hi, so the testing working group was ratified by the build working group, which means they're official. So now the hard work actually begins. And I've been going through old stale issues, trying to reanimate or close as appropriate. Next is Stephen Loomis.
Yes, so the international working group, whoops, okay. We're probably going to move to a monthly cadence because we've had just issues with having everyone attend and also having issue reviews. Looked into some issues with V8 Indianness for builds of V8 on PPC and MIPS. And then one question that came up from the Intel meeting was, which version of V8 will include ECMA 402, 3rd edition, which is just being ratified now, and of course then which Node version will get that and which version of LTS get up in October. I talked with James a little bit. It sounds like if it goes into V8 shortly, it could be a candidate for the October LTS, otherwise not. Shigeki.
I'm working.
Yep, we can hear you, Sheki. No, we can't hear you at all now.
Yeah.
Good talking.
Okay, is there anyone who left? Not, I'm the last one. It's finished.
Left with?
Sorry, Shieki, we didn't hear your update.
Yeah.
Try again.
Oh. Yeah, it's finished. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's finished? Is the working on deprecating the weak ciphers?
Yes, it's the landing is all finished.
Okay, yeah, that's the part we didn't hear. Is what exactly was? It's okay. Cool. Thanks.
Right, that's landed in all of the LTS branches. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. Now, Josh Cavant from Microsoft. This is normally our stand-up section, as you've seen. This is probably a good time for you to introduce yourself and tell us what you do and how you might be able to contribute here in the future. And welcome, by the way.
Your microphone's unmuted, but we can't hear you. Sometimes for some people. Sorry. Sometimes for some people, this software doesn't work on either Chrome or Firefox. So if you have the other one, if you switch to it, it might work.
Okay, well, Josh, we'll let you fiddle with that, and if we get your audio back at some point, we'll do an introduction. But let's move on for now. So, quick review of last meeting. We've got the docs testing working group ratification. That was done by the CTC, and then yesterday it was done by the build working group, so that's done. Quick update on legals, nothing substantive there. And Michael talked about flattening project, talking about his proposal for changing the way the CTC and the TSC and the working groups report and are structured. So on to this week's agenda. We have 3 items that I think we might be able to get through relatively quickly. First of all, the ES module stuff. Now, I didn't, Bradley, I didn't give you a chance to do any stand-up or anything, but I'm hoping that most people know who you are. So, Bradley, why don't you tell us, lead this in and tell us what the status of that EP is, and then where you think we go from here.
Sure. So there's the EP proposal out for giving Node a way to load ECMAScript modules. Currently, Node is using the common JS format that we modified a little bit for our module system. And ES6 brought in syntax and semantics for modules. And the EP is just describing the way to present the exports of both module types to each other so that they can be imported by the opposite type. So it started up beginning of January. This is actually around 6 months after Trevor Norris and I talked a little bit and continued talks with the WhatWG loader group. And it's been mostly stable. There have been a few things that have changed. The interoperability for presenting the exports is stable. That's not really changing. File resolution has undergone tweaks because of browser requirements, which is a little weird to say, but it does give us some advantages. And now we're at 2 final decisions, really. One is how we're going to detect the mode of any given source code. And the other is if we want to allow inner assets to be available from packages. And that's talking about things like readable stream / through or pass through, I think it is, .js, where you can require a file inside of a different package. And those are the only 2 things really in discussion now. The rest is ironed out. Circular dependencies are a little bit of a gotcha, but they're documented and can throw errors with nice error messages. So that's the current status of things, and I guess I should discuss what we're talking about when we're detecting file mode and why.
Yeah, I think for the purpose of this group, what are the issues that you need us to weigh in on to break deadlock, etc., and what are the things that really need a clear decision on?
So there's really 2 viable options going forward for Node, and they're really only 2, which is why this is coming to the CTC. We need to know the module's type before we parse it. And there are a couple ways we can do that. Currently, Node uses the mechanics of require.extensions to do that, where we're testing for the file type. There are some people who don't like that. And so there's contention if we change the file type, which is the current text in the proposal. The alternate proposal is we put the file modes in package.json. Due to mechanics and edge cases, we would have to list every file in a package that is the module goal. So that would be something like having a glob say modules equals star.js if everything is a module. And so those are really the only two paths Node can take.
Question.
Yep.
What are the disadvantages of the file type?
So both have some universal disadvantages just because we have to default to CommonJS. But the ones unique to the file type are going to be the fact that anything that uses like a htaccess file that points to star.js will have to change. And that's where some people are very afraid that servers won't update that. And we don't have a registered file extension against IANA, but Jordan Harbert has promised to fast track us through that if we choose that. So
I think it's more than just like .htaccess, right? So what the people on the other side of this, which is mostly like the spec people, are saying is that, you know, we've never actually suffered one of these file changes successfully in JS. So if you look at like other plugins that have come about that did say ActionScript and other stuff, they basically failed. And part of that was because of this new file extension, or at least that's what they would say. It's much more than .htaccess. It's literally anything that does file detection via an extension. So every code editor, every IDE, every compliance tool checker, everything that ever looks through code and looks at that extension to figure out what type that is, that would all need to change. So there's a huge amount of externalities kind of outside of Node that would need to change in order for this to get adopted really widely. And that's what people are afraid of.
Question.
I would like to note just the TC39 and WhatWG have stepped out of this issue. We're talking about individuals on the committee, and the individuals are split decision on this.
Okay, good point.
Question related to file extension. I had read talk of .m.js instead of .mjs. So .js would still be the suffix overall. Are there problems with going that route that you could talk about?
Yeah, so a lot of different tools currently only read the final file extension. And I could only find reference to one other file extension with a period inside of it that is actually recognized by IANA. So the problem there is...
It sounds simpler, but it's actually worse because most of the tools that would need to update to understand new style modules would now need to maybe change their code to look at more than just the final extension. So it's significantly worse to go that route.
Wait a second, though. You say the tooling needs to update, but won't any like tooling that sees JavaScript code should probably parse module code too, because it's really kind of the same, isn't it?
No.
Like the only thing that's actually going to be parsing it as modules is us, as far as I
think it's also like APIs like path.x name that doesn't work with extensions with dots in it. So yeah, it's like very uncommon to have that sort of solution.
Yeah, so the key point here is anything that needs to parse in the ES mode already has to change. We're really talking about scripts and things that don't parse it. Don't parse the JavaScript itself right now are going to be the ones that are heavily affected that would not be affected by package.json. So rewrite rules, htaccess files, bash scripts. The Rails asset pipeline's a big one. Django has a similar thing.
Can I ask some more like tangentially related questions? I haven't really followed the discussion. Should I feel bad about that?
Go ahead, just ask.
So what I'm wondering is like, did you consider something like useStrict, like basically a string literal in the top of the package that indicates the type of it, or like in the individual JavaScript file? That would be question one. And question two is like, what are these edge cases that require us or to like list every single JavaScript file in the package.json that exposes a module interface? Like, my concern with this is that well, it's very inconvenient, but now also tools that process JavaScript or JavaScript module style files need to parse the package.json and understand what's in there to figure out what type of file they're loading. It's inconvenient to list those files, and so people are going to invent glob patterns, which will become part of the standards, which will be inconsistently interpreted. Like I think that option is also very complicated.
So hold on. So just back up a little bit. First of all, so the whole useStrict Delta thing, that was covered in the issue, and please go to the issue to figure that out, because I don't want to get really sidetracked on that. When Bradley says there's really only two options, really believe that there are only two options. Like, everything possible is considered and thrown out on the way to this. Also, just to make it a little bit clearer on the detection part, it's the entry point for the module, right? So most modules are really only exported via one file. And so it would be module and that file. If you want people to be able to do blah / another file, then those would need to be in there as well.
Right. Okay. I get it. That's actually very clarifying. So it doesn't mean that I have to keep my package.json in sync. It's just another declaration will be added, like this, the entry point, if you require it as an ES6 module. That's helpful.
So it's not just readable stream / pass-through.js that we need to whitelist. It's any file that is the module goal, because there's a grammar ambiguity between the two. And so I think it was Chalker tried to run npm test because you auto upgrade to strict mode on the top 100 npm modules, and it was a horrible disaster through silent failures. Things would parse properly, but they acted incorrectly. So we need to list the goal for anything that is not common JS. Otherwise, we can have silent failures, which is why we're talking about glob patterns. And the goal, the way to mitigate this eventually, would be npm init sets a **.js or something where every file defaults to the module goal. So, but neither solution is a silver bullet, which is why we're here.
Right.
Yeah. So Jeremiah's listed a link in the chat to the wiki page for the different detection options.
The Pragma does actually look like it has the least problems.
It's a huge blocker for build toolchains and rewrite rules, which is our problem. We basically shaft most servers if we do that. And that's where ecosystem, yeah.
In the short term, that's not a huge deal, because anything in ES6 modules is going to get run through a compile change that is working in older browsers. But in the future, that's really going to suck.
Okay, so for moving forward, the CTC needs to be comfortable with this proposal and in order to vote on it. For the CTC members here, do you feel like you have access to enough information to make that call, or is there some way you'd like to be able to dive deeper into these things?
I haven't read up on the issue yet. I'm just aware of it because of the agenda, so I won't be able to vote on it today.
Well, no, you're not voting on it today. This is just the start of a process. So just want to make sure that we are, it's a complex issue. That the EP document is pretty complete, but we want to make sure that there's enough comfort here to be able to make a decision at some point, whether to move forward with modules for a start, and then exactly what shape it looks like. So whether we accept the EP as it is. So. If anyone has any concerns about the way this is being conducted, so Lane, you don't feel like you've got good insight into how the decisions are being made, please speak now, and we'll try and sort that out.
I just hope that
okay,
just because an EP is complete doesn't mean we're going to like automatically take it. I hope no one assumes that.
Yeah, agreed.
Correct. If this is damaging, we should just blacklist it, and we say that in the comments to the EP. Or if you want to know ecosystem contact points, I've got contact points with most places, so just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, if the EP in either of these forms isn't acceptable, we'd essentially be throwing it back to the spec committee and saying, like, you need to come up with something more acceptable and integratable into our ecosystem. That would be what that meant.
So Bradley, what can we do now to help make further progress on the EP? You want us to help make a decision on, or make a preliminary decision on what the preference is here for file detection, or?
So that's the thing. Preliminary is going to be necessary, but we gave a timeline really that next week, so you have a week to think about it and read the EP. But Rollup and Babel want to hear a decision pretty soon. This doesn't affect V8. I was talking to them 2 weeks ago. So they're not a big concern. And like I said, what WG and TC39 stepped out of the issue. So.
Just to be clear, ES modules, like I've heard they're not really, the module systems like them not very inspectable compared to like what we have. You can't really hook into it. It's like, do we have any concerns about that? Is that true, or?
So that relates to a difference where TC39 built the syntax and semantics of the module system. They did not build the loader. So when we're talking about inspection, we can inspect modules themselves pretty well, but inspecting the registry and things like that, you're going to want to talk to the WhatWG loader people, in particular Carity. But no, they're inspectable. I don't know what else to say about that. You've got a metadata pointer. You can throw anything in there. So
yeah, I mean, in the browser, they don't really care because they have a separate declaration that says, like, this isn't a script, this is a module. So they didn't really need to do detection.
Okay, does anyone have any strong feelings either way on detection at the moment?
As someone writing stack analysis tooling, I tend to lean towards the extension approach, just to reduce the amount of having to look over at the package JSON during parsing. But I'm not like fully sold. I haven't completely made up my mind on that.
I think the package.json approach is possibly going to be a very large mess to maintain and deal with in the future.
So when you go and you read through the discussions on this EP, there are a few cases where package.json does not support all the workflows that currently exist in Node. So that's something to keep in mind. The package.json approach is really saying that we're not going to change the file type. And that's the big advantage to it. So, yeah.
Well, it's an assumption from some people that one day all JavaScript modules in Node will be this new module type, and therefore all of our files will either have to have an extension or we can remove that thing from the package JSON. I don't know how realistic that is, but I guess there's an assumption that some people are bringing to the discussion.
Yes, that's the main arguments of Dave, Herman, and Carady. But by the same token, if everything becomes a .jsm, there needs be no knowledge of .js. So both.
Yeah, I
have
think there's
a
a sentimental thing to losing I think there's a sentimental thing to losing .js, or an unwillingness to be responsible for introducing a new file type.
All right, I think I have an opinion too, but like whatever. We'll talk about it next week. I think everybody should just read up on the discussion if we are to make a decision. I would like to ask one more thing. It's kind of unrelated to the other things, but one of the things that Node does is it's like real path modules as you load them. And I have always been conflicted as to this, whether this was a good or a bad thing, kind of both. Was this discussed at all as part of the module loader, or is there completely new semantics, or is it kind of like built on top of like what Node already does, searching Node modules, folders, etc.?
So it deprecates a bunch of the behavior, like node path is gone. And it requires file extensions. It doesn't do the index.js search unless you're looking for a main. They're all listed in the PR, but it's much more limited. It still does real path on symlinks. So that's something we probably have to keep. So.
All right. So that it was listed. Does it still do like the recursive upward search? Like if you can't find a module, it will go up 2 levels, find another Node modules directory, and like.
Yes,
still
it's based upon. So module search stays the same. It's only going to be affected in your current package what it does, or absolute relative things. The style where it's a base URL, the one without relative or absolute, maintains the current behavior.
Let's move on.
All right, thanks. Agree.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So if you feel like you don't have enough information, you need to figure out where to go, then please contact Bradley, and he'll be able to hold your hand through this so that we can have a more meaningful discussion next week. Moving on, the next agenda item is adding Michael Dawson back to the CTC. James, what's your thoughts on the process here? I'm wondering if we should let this sit for a few weeks, or were you thinking just get it done?
I'll leave it up to the rest of the CTC in terms of process. Michael used to be on the CTC, but when we IBM acquired Strong Loop, we pulled him in the student of the spec. Yeah, Michael Dawson. And now that we expanded again, the limit is a little broader, and we can look at adding it back on. So that was just the idea, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the group to decide on the process.
Anyone? How many CTC members are we now? Are we 15 now?
17.
17. Okay, so we're well above the limit. Can we? Okay, can I propose that we let this sit for another week, and folks can generate opinions, and then we'll come back to it next week and do a vote. No objection.
No objections to that.
No. Okay. Okay. Next one is yours again, James. Process add warning event 4782, which has been sitting and churning for a while. What have we got going on here?
So I added this back on the agenda based on some feedback from Jeremiah. Basically, here recently, based on some feedback from Doug Wilson, I expanded that to include a little bit broader handling of deprecation events. And it's really intended to align with some of the things that the user line modules are doing, specifically the depd module that is used by Express. Based on those changes, Jeremiah provided some feedback. I implemented the changes that Jeremiah suggested this morning. So if he's happy with those, then I think we could probably save everyone some time. I think I'd rather move it to Jeremiah to see if you have any remaining issues.
I kind of want to get a little bit more broad feedback on this to make sure people are okay with this, just because I think it's going to, like, this is a pretty large hook that we might end up feeding a good amount of stuff to, and standardize our warnings.
Yeah, we're also going to be stuck with it.
Yeah, we're
going to be stuck with it for a
with
while, so you're going to be happy with it.
So before my feedback, there was 2 different events. There still is 2 different events. So there's warning and there's deprecation. Those are the 2 events, and the default is to just log that out to console. And that, depending to which event would be emitted, depended on the type of like the instance type of the warning you emitted, or the name of it. So if it was a deprecation warning, it would not go to warning at all, but it would go to deprecation. Now that's changed, so everything pipes to warning, but we still have deprecation event right now, because I guess some user modules use it, or have used the similar thing, and that would hooking that in might help. And then I guess the current plan is to keep the current deprecation flags and also add warning flags. So if you ignore all warnings, you won't receive deprecations currently. However, it used to be that if you ignored warnings, you would not necessarily ignore deprecations. So I guess the question in here is should deprecations and warnings be separated any great degree, or should they just be part of the same thing entirely?
So the change that I made this morning, I suggested with Jeremiah, was to make it so that if you use process.emit warning to issue a deprecation warning, the warning event will be triggered. If there are no other handlers registered for the warning event, other than the default one, then the deprecation warning will be forwarded to a deprecation event. But if someone went to the trouble of registering a warning handler, then that will be skipped. That second event will be skipped.
So just for my understanding, is there currently a deprecation event in Node?
No, there's not currently a deprecation or warning event. We just log them out if no flags have been passed.
Right.
But it's written directly out to console error now. The only special handling we do for deprecations is if throw deprecation is set as a command line flag, we throw an error rather than logging it out.
Right. Okay. I was in favor of the warning event, but I do not understand why there is a need for all this complication. Like, if there's no warning handler, will emit deprecation, or like deprecation are emitted separately but also as a warning. Am I missing something here? Should I read up on that discussion as well? I'd
So
like to
there's
keep
been a-
things
there's been a-
simple, and so I would say like just have a warning event and like do all the warnings through that single event.
So
That's kind of what I was in favor of too, but
that's actually where I started, and that's what I would prefer, is just having a single warning event. The deprecation warning was added based on the feedback from Doug Wilson, who the depd module currently already emits process on deprecation events. So it hooks into the fact that process is an event emitter and uses that instead of creating its own event emitter for those things. So the idea here was to get some alignment between what's happening in Node versus what's happening in userland. Now, if we decide, though, that having this additional deprecation event just isn't worth it, then I'm perfectly fine with dropping that and just handling everything through this warning event.
So one question, if you send both events to the same event emitter, is there a way to then easy way to tell that it's a deprecation event versus generic warning?
yeah, it would be an instance of deprecation warning.
Yeah.
So if
So we're
somebody
using
really
the
wanted
error
to,
object. Right. We're
filter
using the error
deprecation,
object, and
so
the
we
error
still
object
do
has
it.
a main property. And when that main property is set to deprecation warning, we can tell for sure that it's a deprecation.
Good. Yeah, I would. Okay. Anyway, I would move to just use the warning event.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, that's fine. That simplifies things overall. I think, yeah, Jeremiah, you said that that's what you prefer also? It's just not having a deprecation event there?
Yeah, I think so. I'll take it back to the issue with another small comment, but yeah, it seems weird that we'd be emitting as what are just really warnings in two different places.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a path forward here, James, do you want to bring it back to the CTC before landing when you think it's finalized, and then you can give us a summary about what it's doing?
Yeah. That will, let's just make sure that that's on the agenda for next week. I can make those changes very, very quickly,
Okay.
probably later on today.
So next week, if you're going to be expressing an opinion on this, then you probably should have read up on what the status of it is. So maybe, James, you can provide a status in the original post of what the current thing is in a couple of dot points. So if you think you're going to care about this next week when we have a vote, please go and engage in that issue now, so that we don't have to go in circles next week. Even if that means you just don't want this added, like, let's have that discussion next week, but let's not go into details about what this is all about. So moving on, Josh, I think we've got you back now with audio. Do we have your audio?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. Do you want to tell us about yourself and what we might be able to expect from you here?
Sure. So I am a technical program manager in DevDiv, developer division here at Microsoft. I'm responsible. I'm right now coordinating across several of our product teams, stuff related to Node. And I'm working hard to get them contributing more and more involved directly in the core project. Of course, I work pretty closely with Alexis for Node on Windows and Node on Windows Server. And I'm actually part of the Visual Studio Code team at this point. So I do work with Visual Studio Code, and some of our browser tools team, and our Chakra team, which is pretty close to me. I'm attending these meetings to start with, to be able to better inform people here and to coordinate and find ways where our teams can contribute more. I definitely am happy to help right from the start here with admin stuff and logistics and whatever. And I'm hoping to gradually make more direct contributions myself. So that's it.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome.
Thanks.
Now, another agenda item is the TSC repo issue number 59. This one fell off the agenda for some reason. It wasn't picked up by my tooling, but it was supposed to return to the agenda. Michael, do you want to talk to this one?
Yeah. So based on feedback last week, and a really good conversation with James, actually, there was a relatively small textual edit to the proposal, but a pretty substantial one. Essentially, we have a bunch of working groups that are really just teams, and we have a lot of unnecessary process for creating those teams because we're calling them all working groups. So the idea is basically just say, like, let's get rid of this whole chartering thing and all this extra process around organizing as teams, and just make it a lot easier for people to create a team, create a repo, go off and do their own thing, not really have to be chartered. So that dramatically reduces the number of sort of like top line projects and working groups, and allows the teams to be kind of more freeform. So that's the main change. So now the only things that would, kind of bump up to the top level would be, NAN, and I think the build working group.
Okay, so thanks for the update. We will discuss this more tomorrow, I assume. So anyone that wants to engage further, let's, at the TSC meeting tomorrow, same time as this meeting tomorrow, if you want to get involved in this organizational stuff.
Yeah, and if you have any objections as well, get them in there before that meeting. I wanted to make sure that anybody on the CTC that's not on the TSC knew about this change and could go and comment before we talk about it tomorrow.
Right, and everybody is welcome here, even though the TSC list is a bit more limited. Everyone here is welcome to join that meeting if you want to discuss things. So feel free to bring opinions over there. Okay, let's move to a public QA session, a public discussion. We have a number of forums. We've got IRC channel Node Dev, I think we're using for this. So if you're in IRC on Freenode, then you can hit us up with questions or comments there. I think also, Jeremiah, you might be monitoring the YouTube channel comments. So if you're on there, then feel free to use that. And also the issue that we posted for this meeting on the Node repo.
So from YouTube, William asks, should modules have a working group? And there's some other comments. So sort of like Promises has a working group to try and like break it into individual issues.
I think Bradley has opinions on this, but my opinion is I'll just quick throw in mine, which is that experimenting with different ways to attack these large change proposals, I think, is healthy for us, and with Bradley pursuing a different method for this than the Promises stuff, I think is good for us to learn which is most effective in finding proper closure. Bradley, your thoughts?
Yeah. So we took the approach of opening issues on the EPS repository instead of splitting out to a working group with its own repository and things like that. In part because it's a single PR, and having its own repository welcomes its own can of worms of trying to put code in multiple places and keep your PR up to date. And the other is, this is an interop thing. It's more of a one-off deal. Once we're done with the interop, there shouldn't really be any reason for there to be a module working group after that point. So we would also have to think about disbanding and what that means for working groups, and that's just a little complex for me.
And I'd add, I guess, that my impression has been that working groups form bottom up. The CTC does not decide that there ought to be a modules working group and then forms one. People band together, form a modules working group, and then come to the CTC to get chartered.
Right, and now we're actually talking about reducing that work so that anybody can just go off and create a team and not have to deal with the chartering.
I don't think the Promises working group is actually chartered yet, is it? I think it might just be a team.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of
I think it's more of a discussion forum.
LTS isn't even chartered. Like this is the whole chartering thing is like actually this is one of the reasons to cut it is that it's a lot of the best working groups actually aren't even chartered. So.
Okay, do we have any more questions on YouTube, Jeremiah?
No, it's just a comment that the person who asked that question says they don't think that PRs are working too well for threads that long. Yeah, nothing else.
That's true. That's why I think Bradley and Trevor opened up issues on that repo.
Yeah, the module discussion has been split up into multiple issues now because the original one is over 400 comments or something now, so kind of out of control.
It takes like 30 seconds to load the page now.
Also,
okay,
like,
well, doesn't sound like.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're right. That's annoying now when you've got big discussions and you've got to go load more comments. What would be more useful from GitHub is a don't load images button, or a.
Well, you did see that they're like halfway through this, so now there's a marker for the last time that you looked at the PR, so that's great.
Okay, let's close the meeting up. Don't believe there's any more business anyone wants to discuss before we do. Nope. Well, thank you, Bradley, for joining us and filling us in, and Josh for joining us as an observer. And we'll talk next week on. I don't even know what date that is next week. So see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.